and this one. That's what I do. I'm a forensic anthropologist who has a degree in archaeology and anthropology. But yes, I'm interested really. I mean, I kind of think of myself as an archaeologist in the anthropology department. So how joint honours degrees work in Durham is they are linked, there's always a lead department. In the case of archaeology and anthropology, the lead department is anthropology. That just kind of means that you will see more of me than, well not actually, because you do both of them, and the people who convene the second year module on Arch and Anth tend to work very closely together, but I'm definitely somebody who kind of inhabits archaeology and anthropology together. So if anyone has any questions going through as well, just stick your hand up and I can clarify things as we go. You know, it's very informal. So what am I going to do? Arch and Anth? Archaeology and anthropology? Come on in. I probably won't spend too much time on general admissions and college info. I think you get that elsewhere, but if you want me to, I can talk about that. What are archaeology and anthropology? Hopefully you know a little bit about what both of them are. Though saying that, I literally came into anthropology because at Cambridge they do them together, and I wanted to be an archaeologist, and I sort of had anthropology thrust upon me, so I didn't actually know much about anthropology. Why do a joint honours? Good question. And then basically all of this stuff. If we've got some time at the end, I will show you a little bit about this inclusive teaching, some work that I've been doing on my forensic anthropology module about trying to make our teaching much more inclusive. It basically kind of came out through COVID. Obviously, I do practical work. I take our students up to the botanical gardens in third year, dig a big hole, bury some plastic skeletons, and then the students come up, we put up some forensic tents, they put on their forensic lights, and we have a whole mock crime scene. And that didn't happen in 2020 or 2021 for obvious reasons. So I made a virtual one, and now I have virtual reality, one where people can grab the bones and twist them and things, and trying to do more work with that, which is actually more inclusive for students with accessibility issues. It's, as we've learned, a useful learning resource for students with ADHD or ASD. So we're trying to sort of increase the accessibility of a lot of the work that, well, particularly with the work that I'm doing. I'm very interested in this. So does anyone want me to really talk about admissions and stuff? Because I'm sure I can do if you want me to. No, but fire, right, good. Yeah, colleges and stuff. Right. Archaeology and anthropology, what is it? Look, it's an old picture. I will say I'm not that young anymore, but just look how happy I am sitting in that wet hole there. I just discovered by my trowel running along here a wall, a wattle and daub wall, Roman. It was like a dream come true. Since seeing Jorvik as a child, I just wanted to find a wattle and daub wall, and that's my very first one, and I was very happy. I was also about 6 feet down, which you can't really tell from that picture, and it was cold. So, archaeology. This is probably the one that you know most about, or most people know about. What is it? Well, ologies are all a study, and archaeology is basically about human history and prehistory. And it's about studying basically the past, and you can do it for modern things as well. There's like archaeology of Greenham Common, for those of us old enough to remember Greenham Common. You can explain it to the younger people later. It's about using material culture, the stuff that's left behind, and we learn to interpret it, develop critical thinking skills about how people lived in the past based on, not always with rubbish. That's a rather beautiful Venus figurine, that's about 30,000 years old. And it's about sort of trying to understand what people were doing in the past, what they believed, how they lived, and so on. Now, anthropology isn't actually all that different. It's just that we tend to study humans in all their glorious forms. And I should say as well, humans and their closest sort of living and extinct relatives. So the living ones are the other primates, We are primates. We are apes. We're not monkeys, and we're not descended from monkeys, mainly because we don't have a tail. But we're apes. And we also study the hominids. So if you're interested in paleoanthropology, that's basically Neanderthals and all of the roughly 21 other species of extinct humans in the past, going back 7 million years. So there's a lot to cover. So obviously I can't really cover everything that anthropology does, but we cover everything that it means to be about human. Morphology, behaviours in the past, and like I say, primates as well. I like to put this up. Currently, anthropologists are the most represented fictional academics in all of media. And probably because people kind of interpret them in lots of different ways. So forensic anthropologists get a lot of press because we're very cool. They crop up in Star Trek an awful lot as well, which of course, people going out and boldly exploring brave new places, that's kind of what anthropology does. I'll come on to the problematic past of that, of anthropology and archaeology, and the colonial past, which haven't always been the best. But yeah, I actually added to my slides this morning because I thought we kind of need to have the fictional archaeologists as well. Obviously the very well-known one there. I think what both of them are thinking here is, maybe I need to rethink my ideas about this belongs in a museum. They're obviously debating their decolonising of the subject here. So, I thought I'd be very egotistic and tell you me. So I am a biological anthropologist. As I say, I'm a forensic anthropologist. This is two activities of me being a forensic anthropologist. This was me working on an actual crime scene. I don't do this anymore, but I used to do work for the police. This was also me being a forensic anthropologist, doing a more sort of social anthropological studies. This was a town in Italy that 60 years ago this year, basically backside of the mountain fell off into a dam. All of the water left the dam and completely demolished the town of Longarone in the Dolomites and killed 2,000 people. And I was working with archaeologists and social anthropologists here to look at how the management of the dead in the past was affecting people today, and how that sort of affected the community. I am a paleoanthropologist as well. That was my original sort of into all of this. Bioarchaeologist, osteologist, all of those things I can call myself. And that's because doing archaeology and anthropology together allows us to do an awful lot of different things. See how I nicely segued into that joint honours? Why do a joint honours degree there? So some of the boring bits. These are some of the offers that we have. So A-levels, AAB. Question that you get a lot of is, do you need to have specific things? Like, do you need to have biology? Do you need to have science? You don't. We don't have any specific courses, A-levels and things that you need to have. We just have these requirements. And that's because we're going to teach you everything from the understanding that everyone's kind of coming in at the same beginner's level in terms of archaeology and anthropology, because most of you won't have done any of either of the subjects. You might have, some of you might have had. Anyone had any archaeological experience? Done any volunteering? As soon as I turned 16, I was on a dig. Happiest with a trowel in my hand. But again, you don't need that. You just need to get the grades to come in. And like I said, it's also because there's such a wide range of things that you can cover that we're not limiting like, oh, you have to have biology or you have to have a language. So again, some of the compulsory. So the first year is probably the most restricted year, but you do get some levels of choice as you go through the joint honours degrees. So in your first year, you have 2 from anthropology and 2 from archaeology. The archaeology ones, I probably don't need to tell you in red because the words tell you that, don't they? Where you do some methods in our research module, and you get kind of some of the history and the background. But you also have another 2 modules. So you can either take another 2 from archaeology, 2 from anthropology, 1 from each, 1 from one of them, and an elective module. So you could do a language, for example, if you really wanted to. And with languages, you can either, if you've already done, say, French to A level, you could go in at that level and do a French module. If you really just wanted to learn Spanish from the beginning, you could go in and do beginner Spanish in your first year as well. So 6 modules, these are the ones you have to do, and then there's the 2 others as well. Now, why you're getting kind of our research and the methods ones is so that you are prepared for when you go into second year and into third year. And this is when we start wanting you to think about what you might want to do your dissertation in. Because there are obviously different research methods. There's a lot of overlap, but there are some differences in kind of research methods in the 2. So if you want to say, absolutely do a dissertation in anthropology, we want you to go down the anthropology kind of methods track. So these are some of the optional modules you can do. So again, if you've got particular interests, say, so like if you were thinking, well, I'm really interested in social anthropology, you would do our pupils and cultures module. If you were really sensible and were interested, obviously, in skeletons and human evolution, because why wouldn't you be, you would do the human evolution and diversity module that I teach on. Or if you're interested in medicine and health, then the health and laws and society. And again, interested in British archaeology, archaeology in Britain, and so on. So these are just some of the choices that you could do in archaeology. So they're the sort of options. So you get to kind of create your degree a little bit in your own way, or quite a lot in your own way. Oh, another thing, the way that they're set up is if you decide that suddenly you much prefer archaeology than anthropology, or vice versa, after your first year, and want to go into a single honours, you can do that at the end of the first year. Again, that's why we sort of set it up in the way that we do, because some people suddenly realise that social anthropology is not for them. Apologies to the social anthropologists in the room. And just want to do archaeology and things like that. But they're usually a handful of people. By year 2, so I've put little asterisks here by the modules, which are the methods modules in each of the departments. The colour coding is going through, because at this point we get our students to start thinking about their dissertation and working on them in their second year. So we have methods at kind of the core of the modules, of the degrees. And so if you're thinking, well, I want to go on and do a dissertation in anthropology, you would be advised, well, you would have to do our anthropological research methods in action module. And obviously, if you want to do the archaeological one, again, that will also fit into sort of thinking about field work. So anthropology's got a third year field school. If you want to go on that, you do have to do the anthropological research methods in action on that. We'll still cover that, because I'm taking this students out for the first year this year to Fuerteventura and Canary Islands, which are apparently not near Ibiza, as I discovered last year when I volunteered to go there on the train, and discovered it was actually another 3 days travel from Barcelona. Pretty nice though. Just not quite cruise ship level ferry. But yeah, so if you want to do that, and you can do that, and in our Fuerteventura one, and also in our Malta one, we cover kind of themes of heritage and history that go in, that would appeal to archaeologists as well. So these are some of the second year modules, the ones that are listed here. The top one, debating anthropology and archaeology. That is only for you. No one else does that module. That's a very specific module in our second year. Hands up if you've done that module. So any questions? He has to be nice because I taught him it. But yeah, debating archaeology and anthropology. What we do here is it's specifically for our joint honours students, and we cover different themes. The themes can vary each year. I do one on the body, and my colleague in archaeology, Rebecca Galland, she comes in and talks about the body from a bioarchaeological point of view. I tend to talk it from like an evolutionary forensic point of view. And the same for other topics. Like we cover art, we might cover decolonising, we've covered slavery in the past. We're looking at them, how we study them from the different disciplines' point of view. Sometimes they're wildly different, and sometimes they're very kind of complementary. And we debate that. Oh, so I was wondering why I put that slide up. That's the first page of the slide. Yeah, this is a very classic anthropological picture. The chap in the middle is Malinowski, a very famous early anthropologist, and there's many things you can say and point out from looking at that picture. That's him and doing his field work. One of the interesting and rather bad things, this is kind of talk about decolonising the subject and thinking about the past and how we can change the subject going forward. He is literally the only person in that picture whose name we know. I'm sure you could pick other things out as well, but that is one of the things, and he's pictured centrally. And we don't really do anthropology like that anymore. I can't really say what's going on here. I like the fact that there's basically one person down the hole and lots of other archaeologists standing around looking at him. Yeah, that I've worked in archaeological digs every year since I was 16. That pretty much sums up. They're probably all the pines behind that. I didn't say that. Archaeologists never drink. So, I've stuck really selling this one. Actually, I'm going to skip this because that's an old slide. I don't know how that stayed in because we've changed it since then. Third year. By the time you get around to third year, you're really probably specialising and knowing what you're interested in. So again, everybody does a dissertation. What the joint honours students have got in terms of dissertation is you have quite a bit of choice. So like I said, you can do a straight anthropology dissertation, you can do a straight archaeological dissertation. You also have the choice of doing an interdisciplinary archaeology and anthropology dissertation, which is you would have a supervisor in both departments. So I quite often supervise students on this. So like for example, I had a couple of students this year. I do the loveliest dissertation topics. I had one doing syphilis, one doing cannibalism, one doing the mass graves from war. I think that was most of the nice topics that I did. So from an anthropological and archaeological sort of point of view, so very interdisciplinary, and basically if what you're interested in, you can then explore that in depth within your dissertation. So in the third year, our modules tend to change a little bit as well. In both archaeology and anthropology, in anthropology we have what we call 10 credit courses, i.e. you do a term of one of the courses. So mine is forensic anthropology. Here's some students doing forensic anthropology. That's so that you can sort of have a wider experience of different modules that are run by people who are basically what they research, you are learning. So other things in our department, primates in peril, that's about primate conservation, for example. Homo narrans, evolutionary anthropology and fiction. It's basically looking at kind of like the evolution of nursery rhymes and how the Red Riding Hood nursery rhyme can be found in lots of different European cultures and so on. And similarly in archaeology, they have a similar approach to this, so that you can sort of pick and choose what you want to do. And there are the field courses. Now, as a joint honours student, you can do one of the field courses. You can either go excavating with archaeology. And if you're doing that, you'll be being expected to do the research methods in archaeology. Though if you're interested and you want to do our field course instead, but you still want to go digging, I think you can still go on like one of the local ones where they pick you up from here. There's one going on at Auckland Castle at the moment. excavation, or at least I think it starts next week with the students. Anthropology has field courses, like I just mentioned, in Fuerteventura and other places, which I think I've got slides on. Yeah, oh, I thought I'd show you some other dissertation topics. They're not all on syphilis. But quite a lot of things on, dead bodies, taphonomy. I had a student a couple of years ago who buried pig's feet. Some were just buried whole. Some were buried wrapped in clothing. Some were buried wrapped in lining. She was basically studying kind of forensic anthropology and taphonomy and what happens. I knew what to expect, but the person who was the other marker, we mark dissertations blind, i.e. we don't know what the other marker's given, but we also have 2 markers for everything. And my colleague's face when he came and told me, he's like, sort of gives me this, oh my goodness, what was that? I was like, yeah, it was nice, wasn't it? With lots of maggots. Not actual maggots on the thing, just pictures of them. But yeah, this sort of shows you the whole kind of range of things that people can do. I may have picked ones that appeal to me. And then the field work. So excavation work obviously happens in the summer. I think like I said, starting next week from archaeology. We run field courses, so we have one of your compulsory 20 credit modules, if you're on the single one as anthropology, runs it's in September, it's 7 days, and we take you somewhere, and you do ethnography and look at various different types of questions. So these are some of the ones in the past. We've had ones in Volos in Greece. That's not Volos in Greece. That's Volos in Greece. That's Malta. The Malta Field School is still running. There they look at topics like looking at kind of the agriculture, food sustainment, but also how the past is used and kind of memorialized on Malta. It's got some amazing, great prehistoric temples. We have one that runs in Gibraltar. That's for more primate-oriented students, where they go and study the interactions between the tourists and the Barbary macaques. There's 2 pictured there. This was one on coal. This one's not running at the moment. This was coal in the Hebrides. So this year we've got Malta and Gibraltar, and we've got one starting in Cyprus, and we've got the one starting in Fuerteventura, which is the one that I'm taking. And we're going to be taking part in a pilgrimage over one of the weekends, and doing work in the museums, looking at indigeneity in the Canary Islands, what it means to be a Canary Islander, but also the way that they memorialise the past. Oh, and we also have, if you don't want to go, or you can't go, you might be a carer, and you can't up and go to one of these countries, then we run a virtual, an award-winning virtual field course as well, which is, you can stay at home, so it's all done through the computer, but it's actually in America. So we are working with a museum, a sort of living museum in, what's it called? Nope, can't remember. Plymouth. It's one of the places where the early settlers, early colonialists settled. And in this living museum, you've got representatives from the indigenous people who still live there. Now, they are not actors. They are representing their lifestyles and sort of the historical lifestyles of their people. But you also have people who are actors, who are recreating the lives of the early European settlers in America. And our students interview these people, and they have a whole week's worth of sort of interaction with the museum. And we're looking to expand that into other places as well. But it means that if you can't go, or you don't want to go, not everybody feels comfortable going for a week's field course. You have a virtual version of it. And I mentioned the fieldwork in archaeology. There's various different archaeology sites going on. This is Auckland Castle, the one that I already mentioned, which is a local one. They have ones in Spain. I think some students are going to Egypt this year as well. Tunisia they went to last year. And fieldwork is pretty much fundamental to both archaeology and anthropology. Obviously, we do different things in it, but it's really important because it's about taking you out of the classroom, it's taking you away from the books and putting things into practice. So you actually get to work with people who are doing the things that you are studying, or go and look at primates from a distance. And so fieldwork is very, very valuable. It supplies you with all sorts of different sort of transferable skills that will be very useful for job interviews and things later on. Here's some things people said about it, our past students, I should say. It was amazing. I learned so much more than I would have if this module was back in Durham. I developed skills in a very different way. Got to experience both biological and social anthropology and so on. You know, students on the whole are very much liking. I say on the whole, one of them on the very first year that we did this came down with appendicitis on her second day. I don't think she had as great an experience as everybody else. Now, all our degrees, so including joint honours, all our degrees have the option to do a year abroad or a placement. So you can apply if you know absolutely now that you want to do a year abroad or do a placement year, you can apply for those degrees. If you come, you do your first year and you think, ooh, quite fancy doing a placement, you can then switch on to the placement of the year abroad after your first year. So we have study abroad placements with all of these places and other places as well, but these are the ones where you have, particularly in Europe, the ones where we have guaranteed teaching in English, so you don't need to learn the language. So we've got here the Czech Republic, or Czechia, Estonia, France, Germany, Iceland, Malta, and then more globally, ones in Japan. Canada is very popular, the US, China, Australia. You can go to other places as well, but they're not guaranteed that it'll be taught in English. So we've got a student who's just coming back from her year abroad who has been in Norway, but she is a native Danish speaker, and Norwegian and Danish are quite easy, so she's quite sort of similar. So she learned Norwegian and was able to study there. But if you've got if you're fluent in Spanish and you want to go to the Spanish one, we can arrange that as well. Placements. These are some of the past ones. People have done conservation, fashion, worked with companies doing online petitions and things. Just had a student drop out of my Fuerteventura field skill. We literally did the session on Monday. We did a 3-hour class preparing everything and having a lecture from somebody on the island. And then she came and said, I'm not coming. And I'm like, what did we do wrong? But it was just that she's got a placement with data analysis in the NHS. So she's off to do that. And she'll do the placement when she comes back. She'll do the field school once she's finished 2 years placement. So you do your placement or your year abroad between your second and your third year, and then you come back and do your third year. Questions we get asked a lot about is, how many contact hours do we get? Well, roughly, and this is roughly because things are slightly different, but roughly every module that you'll do will have probably an hour's lecture a week, and then there will be practical classes or seminars or tutorials. There's usually about 2 or 3 per module throughout the year. So your typical week will differ slightly each week, but you're going to have at least 6 hours plus a little bit more. We as staff have 3 hours worth of, or at least 3 hours worth of office hours each week. So we usually split it over 2 times, when you can just turn up at our door, or you can book an online appointment if you don't want to get out of your bed. And I've done a lot of these with students quite clearly sitting in their bed. No, it's not that one. But yeah, we have them. It's COVID. It's changed things. But we have these drop-in sections where you can just come along and ask us any sort of questions related to your modules, or it could be sort of advice about what to do when you leave, or what. I was going to say what. I didn't repeat myself there. Ignore me. It's the heat. On those lines, though, as well, every student that comes in is given a year tutor. So that means that you will, if you come in at your first year, you'll be given somebody as a tutor. That person will stay with you as your tutor, hopefully, and can't guarantee they're not going to leave, win the lottery and win in Hawaii, but they will stay with you from first, second and third year. So you will get to know that person. That person will be able to write you a reference that they actually know you. They'll know about you, and you can go to that person and sort of build a working relationship and get advice. You also get the option, if you want it, to have peer mentoring. So that means that you, like with joint honours students, we tend to give a peer from the second or third year as a mentor to our joint honours students. So somebody who knows what you're going through, knows the course, and you can ask them questions and things. And then, like I say, we don't just have traditional seminars, we do have them as well, but we also do lots of practical classes. These are students putting up a cabinet that you've seen around the place, designed by our third year students. You even get to go and dig in the mud with me. I'll warn you now, that field smells of sheep. They keep sheep in that field. Oh, I just said all that. Oh, right, so I was saying about inclusive learning and teaching. I've touched on this already. But one of the things that we are really trying to do, not just us, obviously, most universities are thinking about this these days, is decolonising our curriculum. It's not about erasing the past. You know, we could just not show that picture of Malinowski, but it's about acknowledging what's going on. Now, I'm not going to read everything that's on this slide. Just to give you an example, so we have, well, each department in the university has a decolonising working group that is looking at how we approach this in terms of the curricula as a whole. In anthropology, we've been running a decolonising anthropology level 3 module as well. So where students, careful what I say there, someone might have taken this module as well. We talked about decolonising pedagogy. So one of the things, and also about anthropology itself, one of the things we did, and I will not lie, a student burst into tears and ran out of the classroom. She came back, we talked it over, and she produced a brilliant piece of work at the end. But what we're doing in that is also talking about the fact that it's not just about kind of what we study, that we're not just sort of, anthropology is not just going into a primitive society and watching what the natives do type thing, but it's also about thinking, how do we teach? This is a very traditional style. I'm standing at the front of my authority and lecturing to you about stuff. And then traditionally, we would expect you to write an essay. I'm not going to make you write an essay. You can if you want. But it won't get marked. Political comments there. Not that I'm striking, but still. So we're looking at not just writing essays, because it's a very traditional and sort of hierarchical structure. We wanted our students to think about, basically, you've got to choose what you did as your assessment. You had to talk to us about it. What did you do?
So I put together a museum display, which is some tutorials out there, and then did a personal reflection on the debate of repatriation. So I took some of the university's objects from their collection, which were largely non-conformist, so didn't have anything attached to them, and used the display to try and articulate their position within general debates and comparative pieces of repatriation.
We had, somebody did a walking ethnography of this corridor and basically talked about the pictures and the images that are used on totem as a background. Someone else wrote a personal journal, handwritten, and wrote a poem in it. It's great, they did very well. You did very well. Yeah, feel good podcasts. So it's about not just doing traditional types of assessment, and we were trying to sort of put that through, because you can learn to write an essay. That's not giving you other skills. That's not giving you sort of skills and thinking about, there are certain types of people who benefit from me, who can write essays. And then there are other people who have different learning abilities who don't benefit from writing an essay, but could still produce a really good piece of work, just in a different format. And that's the sort of thing that we're exploring when I'm talking about decolonising the curriculum. It's not just about what we study, but it's also about how we study it and how we teach it and how the students learn. I'm going to skip through this because I don't know about you, but I'm absolutely baking in here. I'll just show this very quickly because I'm I'm proud of it. So this is, it's slides, so you can't really get the whole immersive feel of it. But this is, like I say, because we're really interested in trying to develop more inclusive teaching, making sure that everybody, whatever your needs are being accommodated in the way that we teach. And not everybody, you know, I'm quite happy to sit there and just write notes and listen to someone lecture at me, but that doesn't work for everybody. So this is this crime scene. So that picture you saw of my students in the tent, in the little suits, this is kind of the equivalent of it online, and it's still being worked on. So this is what it looks like in practice. Bless them, it was absolutely tanking down, and our tents blew away. Luckily I tied them to the fence so they didn't go away too far. And I was like, you could go home, we could just leave it, and they were determined to finish. But yeah, we put these tents up, we dig holes, and it's a great learning experience, and I get fabulous feedback from it. But it can pour down, and I had a student in a wheelchair, and she couldn't do it. She couldn't access it, and I felt terrible. It's like, how do I make sure that everyone can do this? And started thinking about ways, and then COVID came along, and people were willing to help me. So we made a mock version. In fact, we actually made 4 mock versions. So this is me freezing in a tent in February last year. This is the 360 pole. We did like a whole 360 shoot of this crime scene. I collaborated with the Durham Centre for Academic Learning. So we've got basically a department who are helping people to develop things like this. We have the 4 different scenarios. At the moment, only the case of the missing student is available for the students to work on. The rest are being, but they all have like different scenarios. This one's my favourite one. Sociologists, affairs, it's ripping. There's a fireman. I wrote them myself. I'm not any sort of Agatha Christie. But what the students can do is basically work through all of this. And each of these pages are accessible in lots of different ways. So this is a voicemail, and it's an actor playing the police chief and saying what the scenario is. You can have a transcript. It could be read out by an audio reader if the student is visually impaired and things. So we tried to make it inclusive for everybody. Then the next step, you can go into the 360 video, or you can, where we have this symbol, if you've got VR headsets, and if you haven't, you can go to DCAD and borrow them. You can buy a VR headset and actually immerse yourself in that experience. And at this point, we're hunting for the body. And then we have, for every stage, we have a suggested answer. So this is a model answer written by myself. This is an early prototype. We actually have proper bones and things in here, but you actually use these tools and you excavate so you set up the grid and excavate it as if you were in situ. You photograph the bones. They then go into a sort of online folder which takes you to the 3D images of the bones. So then you can start, if you're working the headsets, you can actually pull them out and twist them around and expand them and things like that. Which you can't do with the real ones. I mean, you can hold them, but you can't expand them. If you did, I'd shout. So that's a little bit what it looks like. So one of the screens of it. So that's showing how we can sort of manipulate the pelvis, half the pelvis, around. And the students have to identify them, side them, work out how the minimum and maximum number of individuals there. Ooh. And basically, not solve the crime, because that's what a forensic anthropologist doesn't do. The forensic anthropologist says who's there, or who is potentially represented in that skeletal assemblage. And at the end, you work through each stage, and you have a fully formed report. And that is a summative assessment. So this basically walks you through the whole summative assessment as well. So it's very sort of useful for students, all students, not just students who have accessibility issues. Finally, what can you do with a Durham degree? Well, obviously I'm going to say this, but I'm not just saying it because I work here. The letters over there, in case I forget. Durham is one of those universities in this country and a field, further afield, where in a way it doesn't matter which degree you have, but a Durham degree, it's a good status to have. Anthropology and Archaeology degree, well, it gives you lots of different skills. Do you want to say something about what you were saying to me earlier about the critical skills? And some of them might have heard it already.
Yeah, something like that. I was just saying, so I'm going to start as an accountant in September, but obviously a bit of a jump going from archaeology and anthropology to then going to accounting, especially somebody who hasn't done that since GCSE. But I just was asked a question in the interview which was exactly that, so, art and to accounting, what skills do you think would be transferable? And I honestly spent half the interview explaining all of the skills that I felt were applicable, and it's everything from how you interpret information, the way that you train your brain to be reflexive about how information is presented to you, how you connect ideas, and I went on and on about that interview, but yeah.
As if we were paying you. Yeah, there's lots of things. And again, I'm just going to skip over these because it really is very baking in here. But you can do all sorts of different things. These are just some examples of what people have done in the past. Police, I've got a lot of students go on to do forensic anthropology masters. One has now become a forensic fingerprint expert, which I think is super cool. We have quite a few midwives because we have a health and human sciences degree. And one of our professors, Professor Helen Ball, is an expert, well, the expert in baby sleep. And she seems to sort of churn out people who want to go off and become midwives. But yeah, obviously the working for charities, environmental research. A lot of students go into NHS, students go into law, some go into being doctors after this, go for graduate study, all sorts of different things, because anthropology teaches you all of the things just said and more, and it makes you understand the world more. So I think I'll finish there.